Shalom, good morning. Continuing our studies, 2 Kings chapters 13 to 17, which includes what happened to some of the original Israelites. Starting from Jehoahaz reigns in Israel, reading from 13 verse 1.
Chapter 13. In the 23rd year of Joash the son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz the son of Jehu began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and reigned 17 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and followed the signs of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which made Israel to sin. He departed not therefrom. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he delivered them into the hand of Hazael king of Syria, and into the hand of Ben-Hadad the son of Hazael all their days. And Jehoahaz besought the Lord, and the Lord hearkened unto him, for he saw the oppression of Israel, because the king of Syria oppressed them. And the Lord gave Israel a Savior, so that they went out from under the hand of the Syrians. And the children of Israel dwelt in their tents, as before time. Nevertheless, they departed not from the sins of the house of Jeroboam, who made Israel sin, but walked therein. And there remained the grove also in Samaria. Neither did he leave of the people of Jehoahaz but 50 horsemen, and 10 chariots, and 10,000 footmen, for the king of Syria had destroyed them, and had made them like the dust by threshing. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoahaz, and all that he did, and his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehoahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. And Joash his son reigned in his stead.
In the above and next few chapters, all that is generally mentioned about the king is their name, appearance, reigning period, and whether they followed God's commandments or did not. They did not follow them. And lastly, how they died and were buried. Regardless of the number of years they lived or reigned, i.e. 40 years, all we are basically told about them is if they obeyed God. On our judgment day, when the books are opened and our record is read, it could simply say our and parents' name, whether we kept the commandments of God and the faith of Yeshua, as it says in Revelation chapters 14:12. Nothing else would be relevant. Achievements, wealth, etc. In some cases, the reason or how the king died is mentioned if it had something with a war or a disagreement which God brought on them for disobedience. Read or listen to the accounts. I shall leave out a few transfer of kingships and jump to chapters 16 and 17, which give more of a history. It's the same in, in Matthew 7:23 or 21 to 23. All those that came and said, Lord, Lord, and they listed all the things they had done, it didn't matter. They did iniquity. All that mattered was whether they obeyed the commandments of God. Continuing from 13 verse 10.
In the 37th year of Joash king of Judah began Jehoash the son of Jehoahaz to reign over Israel in Samaria, and reigned 16 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not from all the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, but he walked therein. And the rest of the acts of Joash, and all that he did, and his might wherewith he fought against Amaziah king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Joash slept with his fathers, and Jeroboam sat upon his throne, and Joash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Now Elisha was fallen sick of his sickness whereof he died.
Leaving out chapters 14 and jump into the end of chapters 15, which is where Pekah reigns in Israel, verse 27.
In the 52nd year of Azariah king of Judah, Pekah the son of Remaliah began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and reigned 20 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. In the days of Pekah king of Israel came Tiglath-Pileser king of Assyria, and took Idron, and Abel-Beth-Maacah, and Janoah, and Kadesh, and Hazor, and Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and carried them captive to Syria.
So here we have some people being carried off to Syria. I include this event to show some tribes of Israel were taken there years before the Roman Empire and the flight from Jerusalem in AD 70. Though they were taken for disobedience, they took the knowledge and customs of the true God to their new lands. So we cannot say a group of people today are the real Jews because they have a custom. See also chapter 16 verse 6, verse 9, and chapter 17 verse 6, and especially chapter 17 verses 18 to 24, where new inhabitants replaced the Jews, so that by the future AD years, we cannot say those fleeing are the true Jews or Hebrews. So I know some people will say, oh, we have circumcision and we also do these things, so that makes us Jews. No, it's just that the Jews probably came to your land and they brought the customs with them, and some people copied the customs. So having a custom doesn't make you a Jew. It's the heritage you have to follow. Okay, jumping on to chapter 16, reading from verse 1. Ahaz reigns in Judah.
Chapter 16. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. 20 years old was Ahaz when he began to reign, and reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and did not that which was right in the sight of the Lord his God, like David his father. But he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, yea, and made his son to pass through the fire according to the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places, and on the hills, and under every green tree. Then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to war, and they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. At that time Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria, and drave the Jews from Elath. And the Syrians came to Elath, and dwelt there unto this day. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am thy servant and thy son. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Syria, and out of the hand of the king of Israel, which rise up against me. And Ahaz took the silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord, and in the treasures of the king's house, and sent it for a present to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria hearkened unto him, for the king of Assyria went up against Damascus, and took it, and carried the people of it captive to Kir, and slew Rezin. And King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw an altar that was at Damascus. And King Ahaz sent to Urijah the priest the fashion of the altar, and the pattern of it, according to all the workmanship thereof. And Urijah the priest built an altar according to all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. So Urijah the priest made it against King Ahaz came from Damascus. And when the king was come from Damascus, the king saw the altar. And the king approached to the altar, and offered thereon. And he burnt his burnt offering and his meat offering, and poured his drink offering, and sprinkled the blood of his peace offerings upon the altar. And he brought also the brazen altar which was before the Lord from the forefront of the house, from between the altar and the house of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the altar. And King Ahaz commanded Urijah the priest, saying, Upon the great altar burn the morning burnt offering, and the evening meat offering, and the king's burnt sacrifice, and his meat offering, with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, and their meat offering, and their drink offerings, and sprinkle upon it all the blood of the burnt offering, and all the blood of the sacrifice, and the brazen altar shall be for me to inquire by. Thus did Urijah the priest, according to all that King Ahaz commanded.
The mixing of paganism, false god worship, with God's system, i.e. the morning and evening sacrifices. No different today with inherited practices, theology and beliefs of many church denominations. Not knowing it was a long ago mix of paganism with God's system. Continuing from chapter 17, verse 1.
Chapter 17. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him.
Continuing from verse 6.
In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Hala and in Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and the kings of Israel, which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord their God. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill, and under every green tree. And there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathen whom the Lord carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. For they served idols, whereof the Lord had said unto them, Ye shall not do this thing. Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn ye from your evil ways, and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the laws which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. Notwithstanding they would not hear, but hardened their necks, like to the neck of their fathers, that did not believe in the Lord their God. And they rejected his statutes, and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity, and became vain, and went after the heathen that were round about them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them, that they should not do like them. And they left all the commandments of the Lord their God, and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. Also Judah kept not the commandments of the Lord their God, but walked in the statutes of Israel which they made. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel, and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, until he had cast them out of his sight. For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following the Lord, and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam which he did, they departed not from them, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria, and dwelt in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there, that they feared not the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, The nations which thou hast removed, and placed in the cities of Samaria, know not the manner of the God of the land. Therefore he hath sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the God of the land. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, Carry thither one of the priests whom ye brought from thence, and let them go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the God of the land. Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. Howbeit every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places.
I have included almost all of chapter 17, as this is a very, very important one for 3 reasons. It shows inhabitants of Israel, not Judah, in Messiah's time were not the original Israelites. We saw they were replaced. So that when he told Messiah, that is, told the apostles not to go to the Gentiles, he meant the ones living in the original Israelites' tribal lands. That was the job of Paul, the apostle of the Gentiles. Same word, Gentiles, but different group. The deported original Israelites, now in places like Assyria and so on, or where they're scattered, now living in foreign Gentile nations, were also called Gentiles. So the word Gentiles applies to the scattered Israelites living in those nations, or the natural born Gentiles of those nations. We are talking about a deportation in chapter 17, centuries before the Roman Empire. So that by Messiah's time, they are not part of the new Gentile nations. These scattered deported tribes are called the lost tribe of Israel, for whom Messiah said he came to reconcile back to God, so that all Israel, i.e. 12 tribes, get saved and reunited. That is the hidden teachings of the Bible that Christians miss because their denomination founders taught themselves from original Christian errors, rather than learn from the book, from the original writers of the book, rather than learning from the Torah. So far we have seen that history is all about Israel, meaning the 12 tribes. It never changed to being about Christians, and it never will. God's worship day never changed to that of the host of heaven, as it mentions in chapter 17 verse 16, as the Sun Day God worshippers. Nor did it include spiritualism, as reading of one's future, a now common practice called divination in chapter 17 verse 17 in today's some Christian denominations today. Now in Hebrews chapter 8 and verse 10, which says, "For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yahweh. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people." And verse 12, "For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more." So note the covenant only applies to Israel, not Israel and Judah. It consists of putting laws in their hearts. A new had to be made, meaning a new covenant with them, because their kings made them break the old one. Christians and preachers keep wrongly using Hebrews 10:16 and Hebrews 8 and possibly 9 in reference to them, imposing pagan denominations and theology. It refers to Israel, as we can see from the source of the verse, i.e. in Jeremiah 31:33. In Jeremiah 31:32 it says, "Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by their hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they broke, although I was a husband unto them, saith Yahweh." And we just saw in chapter 17, that is what they did, they broke the covenant. God puts the relationship as one of a husband and a wife. Under his covenant, a wife could not have a new husband unless the first husband died. Then she was free from the law of her husband or former husband. That is the unknown reason and the mystery why Messiah came and died, to set Israel, the scattered tribes, free from their former covenant and marry again, i.e. return back to God. As I have said before, that is the hidden meaning behind Romans chapter 7 and also in Romans chapters 11 about the grafted in and the unbelievers. The most important message from chapter 17 is why God did what he did and to the extent of the punishment. Failure to keep to his commandments, inclusive of the correct Sabbath days of Leviticus chapter 23. The new inhabitants of the was for not keeping God's commandments in his land. They at least had the faith to seek to learn them, God's commandments, and sent for a teacher, one that knew the laws of God. Similar to in 1 Samuel chapter 5 verse 11, the Philistines learned to respect the God of Israel. So there is a denomination today of a certain race that claims that they got to, let's say, Africa because they were scattered after Messiah died to these places. Chapter 17 shows the scattering happened a long time ago, and that is how some foreign nations got the customs of the Jews. That doesn't make them Jewish, it just means the Jews settled in their lands, and from them they learned some of their customs. Okay, continue from chapter 17, verse 29.
Howbeit, every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities wherein they dwelt. And the men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashamath, and the Avites made Nibhaz and Parta, and the Sepharvites burnt their children in fire to Adramelech and Anamelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. So they feared the Lord, and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, which sacrificed for them in the houses of the high places. They feared the Lord, and served their own gods, after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. Unto this day they do after the former manners. They fear not the Lord, neither do they after their statutes, or after their ordinances, or after the law and commandment which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel, with whom the Lord had made a covenant, and charged them, saying, Ye shall not fear other gods.
I've kept it short, but it's essential you read to the end of that chapter. Now, you may need to read this again, but you bear in mind chapter 17. This is where the division comes from Israel and Judah. And we shall now see the Bible will more or less now focus on Judah, because Israel is no longer in Jerusalem or in the land. So, get this point, because when the New Testament comes and talks about Gentiles or Paul going teaching people, we should see he's going to be scattered, call them Jewish people, Israelites, not to Gentiles, what people call Christians or new people. Shalom, until tomorrow. Happy studying.